I was introduced to the Highlander franchise at a fairly young age thanks to my brother. Needless to say, I was amused by the picturesque Scottish Highlands and the concept of immortal warriors whose swords left the scabbards faster than I could inhale my chocolate milk. But then my nascent mind was exposed to the concept of a Dark Quickening. Dark Quickening is one of the most disturbing and mysterious ideas in the Highlander lore, because it takes the franchise's main power and contorts it into something absolutely corrupt, unexplainable evil, unstable, and outright terrifying. The Quickening is usually seen as the force that passes knowledge, energy, and life essence from one immortal to another. But when evil, madness, and accumulated darkness infect that transfer, it results in something far more dangerous than a simple power-up. It becomes a spiritual demonization. That is what makes a Dark Quickening such an interesting concept for the viewers. Is it a curse, a side effect of absorbing too much evil, or proof that immortality itself carries a hidden cost? In this video, we're going to peel back all the layers to explain what a Dark Quickening really is and why it matters. Let's first understand, what exactly is the Quickening? Okay, before I get into the idea of a Dark Quickening, let me explain exactly what a Quickening is for my new fans here. The first thing you need to know is that immortals can be killed in only one way, by decapitating them. Swords are generally preferred for the beheading, though any form actually does the job, like an accident or a guillotine. Now, when one immortal permanently offs another immortal, the powerful energy from their body is released, and this phenomenon is called the Quickening. So, what is this energy? Basically, it comprised all the knowledge and strength the immortal had collected throughout his or her life. The older the immortal, the greater this energy. You can understand better if you relate it to a major electrical storm which explodes windows and creates a short circuit. Actor Adrian Paul, who played Duncan, stated that the Quickening was like the receiving of a sacrament or a massive orgasm. Yeah, you caught on to the word. No, not the second one. Shoot! I meant the word receiving. Till now, I just described one part of the Quickening process, whereby the dead immortal emits this huge current of energy. The other part involves absorbing that force. And who absorbs it? Well, obviously the immortal who did the beheading. The Quickening for him or her is sort of a gift for taking the opponent's head. Remember, I mentioned that the sword is the preferred choice of weapon. That's because unless an immortal dies at the hand of another immortal, and he or she ends up losing their head accidentally without any immortal in vicinity, their entire energy goes to waste. In short, the Quickening dissipates into thin air. Quickenings have different effects on immortals. Thankfully, the second film in the series, Highlander 2: The Quickening, delves into it, and we saw how one Quickening de-aged Connor, who had grown old after winning the prize. Another Quickening resurrected Juan Sanchez Villalobos Ramirez. If the Highlander universe had a Patronus, trust me, it would be the Quickening. Now, Quickenings can be of two types, light and dark. Since I'm about to explore the Dark Quickening in detail, it's important to know the opposite. Light Quickenings happen when a virtuous and holy immortal is beheaded, and their pure energy is passed on to the winner. Basically, immortals are gradually influenced by the Quickenings they take, and that's exactly why an evil immortal may become righteous after taking the energy of honorable immortals, and vice versa. What is a Dark Quickening? Alright, let's get into it. I'm sure you've got the gist of it. I mean, it's the complete opposite of a light Quickening, which means when an immortal beheads another who is evil, their negative aura passes on to them. Sure, they get all the wisdom and skills, but the malevolence is part of that package. A Dark Quickening happens when the essence of a truly evil immortal overwhelms the winner of an immortal duel. The immortal in question, no matter how noble or good, is corrupted, as all the negative traits of their personality subjugate the positive. However, the intensity with which it affects an immortal depends on two things. One, how strong the wicked aura is, and second, for how long an immortal has been accumulating such malicious energies. This extreme form of quickening was believed to be a myth. However, it was more real than my love for the Super Bowl. Dark quickenings completely reverse the personality of an immortal who absorbs it. In fact, the real self of an immortal is suppressed when a dark quickening happens, causing the darkness of a powerful immortal to completely replace one's virtues. Connor MacLeod allegedly suffered from it, as we can see in issues 6 to 9 of the Highlander comics, published by Dynamite Entertainment. He told Duncan that ever since he took Kurgan's head, he'd been finding it hard to maintain sanity and control. To top off Connor's struggle, Kurgan's guard fed him with the idea that he was inside of him, fighting to get out. Connor did kill an immortal, Catherine Curtis, and her partner out of the blue, and when the adrenaline left his body, he stood there thinking about what he'd done. Deep in his heart, he knew he'd become a monster, and killing immortals randomly was not something he did naturally. Connor felt like Kurgan was laughing at him, fueling his spite and causing something dark and hateful to boil inside him, which finally led to him making the fatal strikes. Connor knew he was heading down a nasty path and had to stop. But how? A dark quickening is generally permanent and can change the receiving immortal into a savage, remorseless killer. He even almost took Duncan's head while playfully sword fighting, only to be stopped by Brenda and realizing that once again he did not know what he was doing. In fact, Connor did fight Duncan brutally during this phase when the immortal Gordon Byrne tried to use Connor's dark quickening to his own advantage, and Duncan, Rachel, and Brenda all ended up being collateral damage when Byrne kidnapped Connor. Kurgan was out again. Well, it was more of a symbolic plot point where Kurgan said he was bound to Connor's soul always, and once again the two fought, and Connor defeated Kurgan again. Basically, Connor fought the evil side of him, and it was like looking into the mirror where he saw Kurgan. Finally, Connor defeated the dark quickening, and when Duncan found him on the boat Fitzcairn had acquired for him, his last words to Duncan were, "It's just me, Duncan. Just me." See, Connor is arguably one of the strongest MacLeod immortals with centuries of experience. If a dark quickening could shatter someone as ancient as him, we can only imagine what damage it could cause to younger immortals. As a matter of fact, Connor himself once helped another immortal, Sunda Castigear, his longtime friend, to overcome a dark quickening in the comics. Back in 1851, Castigear was afflicted with the dark quickening after having taken the head of an evil immortal. He wrote a letter to Connor and went to Dry River, Texas, where he hid himself in an abandoned mine. Soon, Connor and Duncan arrived there, and Castigear locked himself up to fight the effects. Eventually, he succeeded and thanked Connor and Duncan. I mean, it felt no less than an exorcism. You'd think Duncan, having witnessed so much pain that a dark quickening endows, managed to save himself over the centuries. It turns out he couldn't, and in fact, got the dark quickening in a rather heartbreaking manner. In Highlander the series, Duncan went through a tough time when he lost his love in Sue, Little Deer, and had nothing but vengeance in his blood. Coltech met him, and the two happened to be put together in the same prison in 1872 over skirmishes with the military. Coltech got through to Duncan slowly and steadily, and persuaded him to give up the anger and hatred for his own peace. Duncan and him became friends ever since, but Coltech had this particular power of the Hioka, which gave him the ability to take the evil and rage of others into himself and render it impotent. Having survived the imprisonment, Coltech continued his self-appointed practice and expanded it to the rest of the world. However, soon the evil became harder and harder for him to absorb and overcome, and Coltech realized that he was amassing a level of darkness beyond his ability to contain. By 1996, the inevitable happened, and Coltech's habit bit him in the back. He was in Seacouver to meet Duncan when Coltech encountered the violent immortal Horvin Kant, who was in the middle of robbing a store clerk. Coltech killed Kant and absorbed his dark quickening, which pushed him past his breaking point. The holy man was finally engulfed by malevolence. He could fight it no longer. See, Coltech is an example of when I said that the effects of the dark quickening sometimes depend on the collection of foul forces and surfaces only when it hits the limit. Coltech took the dead immortal's leather jacket and his desert eagle, calmly walked up to the store clerk he had rescued, and shot him in cold blood without even batting an eyelid. Then he hurried to meet Duncan and Richie Ryan, But when the two were walking up to him, Coltech suddenly lashed out at MacLeod without any warning, let alone a formal challenge. The Highlander managed to send him over the bridge and toss him into the water, but he realized in an instant that the curse had befallen Coltech. He searched for Coltech, and on finding him, cornered him in an alley, trying his best to reverse the effect of the Dark Quickening using Hyoka teachings he had learned from Coltech. He failed though, while a demonic Coltech taunted him and ran off. Coltech then killed the owner of a pawn shop and blew it up. Duncan knew at that moment that man was definitely not Coltech. Neither was it Kant. He was now Corland, a vile immortal whose head Coltech had taken years ago. Duncan then figured there was only one way to end Coltech's suffering. Issuing his challenge, he dueled Coltech and took his head only for the Dark Quickening to take him over. Some fans believe that there is no real way to stop a Dark Quickening, and it only depends on the mental strength of the winning immortal. In Duncan's case, many believe that killing Coltech triggered some overwhelming feelings within him, and that allowed the Dark Quickening to happen. I guess there's a point to that, because when Duncan beheaded Coltech, the auras surrounded him, and the faces of his enemy immortals whom he killed over the years, like Quentin Barnes, Nefertiti, Kern, Alexei Voshin, John Garrick, and Caleb Cole, seemed to morph into his face. Soon after, he started behaving weirdly, harassing women at a pub and provoking a fight with Richie. The two dueled, and Duncan would have killed Richie if not for Joe Dawson, his mortal friend. Dawson intervened with a gunshot, looked at Duncan and told him, "Whatever monsters are in you now, I know you're still in there too." He told Joe to kill him because he was unsure of what he might do. Duncan then boarded a cargo ship as a crew member, not knowing where he was going. He ended up in France under the influence of the Dark Quickening and actually murdered an old friend, Sean Burns. Mythos, known to be the oldest living immortal, was there to help him out. Mythos persuaded Duncan MacLeod to leave with him, and the two traveled to an ancient holy spring in the countryside. Mythos then told Duncan about Rachel MacLeod, a mortal descendant of his clan, and that he'd invited her to Paris as part of getting her to lend him the clan's sword. Standing in the water with the sword in hand, Duncan entered the spring and confronted the dark version of himself in his mind. The two sides of Duncan fought, with his better nature ultimately winning, and Sean Burns' gentle spirit guiding him. To answer the question as to why immortals fear it, it's simple. Fighting the overarching negative energy of a Dark Quickening is goddamn difficult. The thing is, immortality is not really a gift. An immortal has to live hundreds and hundreds of years, more than half of that lifespan being fraught with perils. Fighting other immortals, pressure of the game and the prize, seeing their loved immortal beings die, and making countless enemies. Dark Quickenings are an additional burden that no immortal wants to deal with. Moreover, it reminds them that every victory comes with a cost. Each time they take the head of an evil immortal, there's always a looming danger that fragments of their corrupted soul and power are being absorbed by the winner. Meaning, even the most honorable immortal has to live in constant fear that one day, a single beheading will be all it takes to ruin his heart and mind. A Dark Quickening is probably one of the darkest themes in the Highlander universe. While killing devilish immortals may protect the world, it creates a paradox where the mortal ones are always at risk. This is exactly why wise immortals avoid needless fights and battles and warn the younger ones about the hidden dangers of the game. Alright guys, that's all for today. The fact that immortals are as old and strong as Connor and Duncan and had to go through the Dark Quickening reveals the chilliest truth about the life of immortals. No immortal is safe out there. They might spend what looks like an eternity to build their identity and reputation, but ideally, they're walking on eggshells. One swift stroke through someone's neck can very well be the end of their true selves. And for warriors who have lived for centuries, that may be far worse than death. Do let us know your thoughts about the ominous side of the game in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye!